Sometimes it's possible to overstate the extent to which Russia has changed its mind about its relationship with the outside world. Some things never actually changed. It's just that the outside world was not paying a great deal of attention. When Russia took on all of the features of a democracy and appeared to be on a path moving towards something that was recognizable as a modern country by the rest of Europe and the rest of the world was less inclined to pay attention to those messages from Russia about the way in which the imperial instincts remained unchanged, about the way in which Russia still saw itself as the leader and the owner of the countries around its periphery. Those messages remained constant throughout that whole period, and that ambition remained stated, including in dealings with international partners. And yet, it was so inconceivable to the outside world that things had not changed that they were disregarded. This is the reason why when President Putin in 2007 gave his famous speech at the Munich Security Conference pointing out that Russia was not entirely happy with the way the world was developing, he only repeated messages that had been stated with increasing urgency and strength from Russia over the preceding years. It only came as such a shock to people because they had not been listening. Russia has multiple overlapping goals. Sometimes, and this is a factor that is often overlooked when people look for a strategic objective for what Russia does, sometimes the goal is simply to cause harm. Because if you have a zero-sum view of security, if you think there's a finite amount of security to go around, then anything that you do to damage or harm your adversary or cause them costs actually benefits you and makes you stronger by comparison. So Russia can simply carry out petty vandalism. And because it causes costs and disruption, Russia is better off as a result. That's at one end of the scale. At the other end, of course, there are strategic objectives for what Russia does, and that is coming to the fore in the current campaigns that we see in the moment. Back in 2019, I worked with the Swedish defense research agency, FOI, looking at ways in which Russia could immobilize Europe, specifically to try to prevent reinforcements from NATO countries reaching the site of a crisis by preventing movement into or within an area that Russia wanted to control. So, if, for example, Russia were to launch some military operation against a neighbor in Eastern Europe, how would they stop reinforcements from the United States, from Canada, from the UK crossing Europe? The patterns of activity that we listed as likely ways in which Russia would seek to do this are precisely the patterns of activity that we see at the moment. Targeting logistics chains across Europe, cyber attacks on railways, reconnaissance of key logistics hubs, and also addressing the ways in which emergency preparedness facilities are scattered across Europe and looking at ways of interdicting them in a time of crisis. Added, of course, to the cyber attacks and electronic warfare attacks like GPS jamming that we've seen stepped up over recent years. Put all of this together and we ticked off a lot of the activities that we thought would be precursors for an actual Russian military move beyond Ukraine against a NATO nation.